The Raptors fall short against the Los Angeles Clippers. 108-100 is your final. Welcome to Raptors Tonight. I'm Randy Urban, joined by Jack Armstrong, Jevohn Shepherd, and Paul Jones. Jonesy, I'll start with you. After that demoralizing loss last game against the Denver Nuggets, the Raptors started strong, forcing the Clippers into turnovers, but the momentum shifted in that second quarter. How did you see the Raptors defense as a team change after that first?
Well, they did a pretty good job. My issue was with the conversion. Jevohn and I were tracking it on the radio, and at the end of the quarter, the Raptors already had 10 more field goal attempts than the Clippers. They weren't shooting a great percentage, but the sheer volume. And then I thought the Clippers did a better job of looking after the ball, making sure the right people were handling it. You notice Russell Westbrook didn't play a whole lot, particularly in that second half. There was a lot of Terrence Mann. And even when Russ was on the floor, he was a guy that was just kind of catching the ball and swinging it to the next guy. So I thought the Clippers did a better job of kind of hanging on to the ball. And, when they're not turning it over, Toronto's not getting runouts, live ball possessions. So, part of it was, the defense was good. It was steady. It was active. But the Clippers contributed to their own demise. And I thought some of that stopped and made it difficult for the Raptors, particularly in the second half. Like you look at the second half of the game, man, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George had their hands on the ball a whole lot. And when it wasn't them, it was Terrence Mann.
Mm-hmm. And Jevohn, what did you think about the Raptors' effort tonight?
Well, I thought the effort was there, and the effort was there early, but they kind of went away from what was working. That's in that first quarter. I think they held this Clippers team to 17 points. They were getting out, they were running, they got some easy stuff there. And then they allowed the Clippers team to slow them down and play the half-court game, right? That's not the game you can get into with them, because the reality is that's an extremely talented group. You have Paul George, you have Kawhi Leonard on both wings. These guys are perennial scorers, right? And you've seen Paul George just take over the game. Terrence Mann, to me, was the MVP of this game. He came in, he played big. There was a huge presence that he had. Even in that second quarter, he started it by, getting behind Chris Boucher in the 2-3 zone there, and then followed it up with an offensive rebound that led to a kick out on a three. And the Toronto's offense was just a little, I think the difference was, I don't want to say stagnant, but the quality of shots that they were taking were far tougher than what the Clippers were getting, right? So, they kind of demoralized themselves in a sense. But it's one of those things, it boils down to experience. When you look at this Clippers roster, and a number of times I joked with Jonesy on air about it, they had guys that were 30, 31, 32, 33 on the floor. So they couldn't get up and down, but they could play the half-court game and execute. I think the Raptors just got away from what was working for them, right? They won the field goal battle. The goal of this game is to end at the end of the fourth quarter, have more points on the board than your opponent. You won the field goal attempts by 25. You've got to convert. You've got to put the ball in the hole. It's a pretty simple game that way.
Yeah, and Jack, building off that, it's hard when you face a team that has two guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Both these guys can get whatever they want essentially on the court. Did you like the way the Raptors defended them?
At times, to Paul and Jevohn's point, I think early on, I thought their defensive intensity was great. And they were showing multiple bodies and doing a good job cutting off driving lanes. Then as the game went on, they got where they wanted to get to. So, fatigue sets in, the dynamics change a little bit, and people adjust. And now those guys are surrounded by different players, and you put a Terrence Mann in there, the ball's moving a little bit more. They're playing with more energy. And, the Raptors, to me, they seem to be that team that still finds a way to get into droughts. Mm-hmm. It's hard to shoot where they shoot right around 38, 39% tonight from the field. It's hard to allow teams to shoot north of 50%, and then you're going to shoot below 40. The Raptors had more field goal attempts. I thought the energy was good, but they still, not having Will Barton, I don't know how big a deal it would have played, but just punch, consistent, being able to play the whole game at a relatively good level. There seems to be those dips, and there seems to be dips in concentration too, where for like 3 or 4 minutes, they just The ball is being driven by guys. They're giving up easy baskets. Now they're losing their composure and their shot discipline on the other end. But it just seems like they have that time where they just they just hit that wall where they lose concentration, lose focus, and it really impacts them.
Yeah, and Jonesy, they didn't really get much from the bench outside of Chris Boucher tonight, which is surprising because the bench has been more consistent over the last little while.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. At one point, we looked at it. I know in the middle of the second quarter, Boucher had 9 off the bench and nobody else had anything. And you're right, they didn't get a lot out of the bench tonight. And I think we commented on the radio side about 6.5 minutes to go. Nick put his starters in and said, you know what, it looks like I'm going to ride these guys most of the way, especially when I'm not getting anything from my bench. So, the bottom line is, to Jack's point about the field goals attempts and converting, the NBA is a league now where you can't have the droughts. You can't have those blackout periods because, I'll show my age here. In the 80s and 90s, when I had a blackout and I wasn't scoring, I could really get into you defensively and be physical and keep you from scoring. That doesn't happen now because you can't touch guys and a couple of drives and a couple of reach-ins, and next thing you know, the other guy's shooting a penalty. Now he's really going to be aggressive. So, Jevohn and I have also talked about, at the end of the quarter, like the 2-for-1s, like why do you do that? And it's for possessions. Well, you already got 25 more possessions than the other guy, right?
Yeah.
Make some shots. And so I think, to Jack's point, it's a way of, in this day and age of the NBA, your offense has to keep you in games just because of the sheer volume of scoring and the way the game is officiated.
Yeah, and Jevohn, like as I'm watching this game and I'm seeing obviously the Clippers have 2 of these massive stars, superstars in the NBA, and Kawhi and Paul George, but I'm not sitting there thinking this team is better than the Raptors. I'm feeling like we match up well with them, with our size, with Siakam, with Scotty Barnes, with OG in terms of our switchability, and it felt like this game was there for the taking.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and I think a part of that, and it boils down to, again, to Jack's point, to Jonesy's point, in this case, your offense is kind of got to generate and give you that energy for both sides of the floor. And you look at some of the shots that you're taking. I mentioned it earlier where, you have the matchups on the wing. Well, this is a different game, right? You're not going to get to the mid post. You're not going to have the size advantage on the perimeter. But what you can do is play off the catch, play off of the closeout, create those advantages in some pick and roll situations, get the ball moving, use your athleticism against a slower, smart team, talented team on one end, but they haven't been the best defensive team, right? And I think when you're playing more off of the catch, when you're playing more with the pop and a conviction, then you have this team at your mercy, right? You look at the free throw numbers tonight, and it's 31-14 in favor of the Clippers, right? This could have been an opportunity where the Raptors are using their athleticism and have them on closeouts and forcing them to rotate and forcing them to scramble, and then you get some easier looks, force them into fouls. And I don't think they necessarily did that tonight. I don't know if it was a focus thing. I don't know if it was game plan, but also give the Clippers credit when you have a Kawhi Leonard on the other team. Remember, he was the big brother to all these guys in 2019. So psychologically, and there's that mental component where you're looking at it and that's big brother over there, right? You're not you're a little apprehensive and you're still sometimes maybe even starstruck that this is Kawhi. This is the guy, right? So, you've got to come out. And again, this is basketball. This is the NBA on the defensive end. You can't rely on rotations at the last, the back end of your defense or the late in the clock. You've got to do your work early. These guys are way too good. These guys are way too talented to be scrambling late. Got to do the work. Got to be disciplined early.
I just want to jump in because Randy made a point to Jevohn about, playing the Clippers, and, the Raptors aren't that far off. I look at the Raptors against the Nuggets, the number 1 team in the West, played them to a standstill for 44, 45 minutes. You look at tonight, for the overwhelming part of the game, they had every right to be on the floor with these guys. And a lot of people had the Clippers hyped up to be in the NBA Finals. To me, they're not far off Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
They are not far off. And it's just breakdowns. It's just, and that's going to be the key. And you're running out of time, but can you get to a point where you clean these things up and you become that sounder a team where maybe you have 11, 12 possessions a game where you go, who are these guys? Who are these imposters wearing Raptor uniforms? Can you get that down to like 7? Where you have 7 just lousy, terrible plays where you go, oh my goodness, but there's not 12 of them. And you take those 5 away, that's a big swing. A few might be on offense, a few might be on defense, but can you become, I kept using the word the other night in Denver on television, fundamentally, well, 2 words, fundamentally sound, and the other word I used was discipline. And I think teams that get better in season, their fundamental base gets better, and their a level of internal discipline, player to player, collectively as a unit, gets better. And you know, victory favors the team making the fewest mistakes. And I still think some of this stuff is self-inflicted.
Jack, just to add to that, I'm going to add one more word to that: closers. Right, and it's not just closing the end of games, but you know, closing the end of quarters, closing out possessions. You know, at the end of you play 20 seconds of great defense, and that last second, you know, a missed assignment, closing out those possessions, closing out road trips, closing out homestands. Right, especially down this last stretch, you want to close out the end of the season because that creates momentum.
Randall, I'll give you an example. Jevohn and I were in the studio. There was one point when the Raptors got a couple of scores and the Clippers hustled the ball to the other end, and Pascal had somebody, and the defense was just, they couldn't match up and identify. And you heard on the microphone, you heard Pascal yell to Pirtle, yuck, trying to get him to go out to the guy in the corner. And by the time Pirtle realized, it was Eric Gordon standing in the corner wide open for a 3, and he knocks a 3 down. And to Jack's point, those are the possessions demoralizing. Like if you recognize, if you communicate, if you're a little more disciplined in terms of your matchup and communication, now Eric Gordon, that 3's contested and maybe it doesn't go down. It's not a practice shot where he's just standing in the corner, knocking it down. So those are the little things, and they're not that far off.
All right, guys, great stuff. Going to stop it there. Next game for the Raptors, Friday against the Lakers, 10:30 p.m. Eastern is the tip. After the game, be sure to catch Raptors Tonight on Raptors YouTube and NBA TV Canada. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.